Hi, everyone, and come on in. Welcome to our event, which is this series that we've been on, the Next Stop Assessment for Learning. We're glad to have you here. I'm Johnny Frank, and I work at Michigan Language Assessment, which, as you can see, is part of the Cambridge family. And, well, today's session is called Enjoying the Journey, and we hope you've been enjoying it thus far. It will be about how to make classroom-based assessment more effective, leading on to greater confidence in summative assessment. Presenting this session, we have Alberto Costa and Rafael Carpenes. Alberto is from the Cambridge Assessment English side, and Rafael is from the Michigan Language Assessment side. Alberto, Senior Assessment Services Manager Americas for Cambridge Assessment English. He's worked as a teacher trainer, and has also worked as a course tutor for teaching qualifications, CELTA and Delta. Assessment and continuing professional development are some of his key interests. And then we've got Rafael. Give us a wave, Rafael.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. Great. He's currently the business development manager, business development and marketing manager for Michigan Language Assessment. He's been in the ELT field for over 20 years, working as a teacher trainer, and academic consultant. Neuroscience applied to education and assessment are some of his main interests. So we've got a fantastic duo for you today. So let's get started. I think I'll leave the virtual floor to you guys.
Thank you very much, Johnny. So just to make sure and recap a little bit, so this is part of the Next Stop Assessment for Learning. And today we will be speaking about enjoying the journey, okay? We are going to follow this agenda today. So the first topic will be about the goals and milestones. We will also take a look at the can-do summary so we can guide ourselves and see what we are doing in the classroom. The third part of the presentation will show and share some assessment tools. Hopefully you guys will benefit from them. We'll also speak a little bit about skills and knowledge, very important at this stage of the webinar and of assessment as a whole. Number 5, we will learn a little bit more about the exams themselves, so know exactly what is in each part of the exam. In number 6, we'll take a look at some resources, and then, of course, very important for the whole journey, it's important to recap, so we will recap the whole process, and then towards the end, we will have some minutes for questions and also sharing references with you.
Okay, Rafael, thank you very much for this introduction. I would like to thank Johnny as well for his amusing introduction. And Johnny has great rapport with the audience. I think, Johnny, you were cut out for this. Everyone, hello, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's a pleasure to be here again together with my colleague Rafael to talk about assessment, which is a theme that we both love talking about. So we're going to start talking about goals and milestones. I mean, if you have been attending the previous webinars, you have seen that we started off talking about principles of assessment for learning, and then we talked about all the different instruments that you can use for formative or diagnostic assessment. And then Rosalia and Johnny last Tuesday talked about multi-level and level-based exams. And today we are going to talk about goals and milestones so that we can better help prepare the learners for the moment of the summative assessment and build their confidence, right? So when we think about the process of acquiring an additional language or formally learning an additional language, this is a long process. It's a long-term goal, and speaking a language with confidence in different contexts, using a range of skills, is something that demands time, it demands effort as well. So it's very important that we look at this process as a long-term goal, and therefore we need milestones. So just like when we are planning to travel, and traveling is the theme of this event, this series of webinars, we know that we make decisions about where to go. So all those places that we want to visit, they are there. It's just like our goals when we want to prepare the students to learn a language. The goals are there, but we just need to decide which goals we want to achieve, what destination we want to get to, right? So goals are very important when we're talking about language learning, because when we think about language learning nowadays, and especially when you have an exam in mind, this means that you have a target to aim for. So this target, which is the final destination, that is achieving a qualification in the language, is internationally understood. It's commonly known as the CEFR, or the Common European Framework of Reference. And this is exactly what it is, a clear reference for all of us who devise exams. It's a clear reference for course book writers. So the course books, the course materials that you used are aligned to the Common European Framework of References, all the descriptors. This target is described in detail, and it is nowadays available to everyone. And you can also see those details in your course books or teachers books. And having a target or a series of targets, it's very important because it improves motivation. As I said, it's a long-term goal, but if you see the milestones along the way, this helps you celebrate the steps that you get to as you are in this long road towards achieving good proficiency in a language, right? But it's not just a case of level, it's also a detailed description of competencies in the four skills, right? So when we're talking about those competencies in the four skills, this makes the goals that we teachers set for our learners, or those goals have also been established by the institution where we work, or they have been established by, for example, the government in some countries in Latin America. You need to reach a certain level in English so that you can get your university degree, for example. So when we look at those goals and we look at those competencies, this makes our goals smart. What do we mean by making our goals smart? It makes our goals specific. So we know the kind of levels we want to reach or we need to reach. And we need to know also the competencies that we need to develop in order to achieve a certain level. It makes the goals measurable as well. And if they are measurable, what we mean here is the goals are accessible. That is, you develop certain competencies, you are assessed along the way for diagnostic purposes, for formative purposes, and then you come to the point of the summative assessment so that you can have your competencies and skills validated, right? It makes your goals achievable as well. When you have certain levels and you are clear what the levels are, it means that it's easier for you to achieve the steps, right? It makes also the goals relevant for you, and it makes the goals time bound. So usually when you have this destination in mind, that is achieving a certain level in a foreign language, you need or you usually have a deadline for you to sit the exam. That is, it makes your goals time bound. So by the date of the exam, you need to have achieved a certain level in the language, right? And it's not just a case of setting the goals just because they are goals, but those goals that are known nowadays to everyone, they help the teacher to plan long term. That is, it gives a structure to a long process. So it impacts and it also helps to define the language content that the teacher needs to cover. the teacher understands that they have to develop all 4 skills in the learners, because those qualifications, they assess your competencies in the 4 skills. And when we're talking about Michigan Language Assessment and Cambridge English, Cambridge Assessment English, we know that our exams focus on the communicative skills. So there is a communicative approach that needs to be part of the teaching practices in the classroom, right? So the teacher understands that they have to develop skills and knowledge in the learners. And as we go along on the road, once the teacher is aware of the skills and knowledge, it is a moment to offer the learners a lot of practice in those skills. So making use or making good use of the course books, workbooks, and all the extra materials that teachers nowadays have access to, and then they bring into their classroom. And then by doing so, the learners will be better confident to sit an international exam, and finally reach the destination, which is achieving a certain level in the language and getting their certificate. So all those things here illustrate the milestones, and those milestones, they help shape teaching and learning, so that you can also after shaping teaching and learning, you can also make the destination clear for learners. We are going to look at 2 scenarios here. And the purpose of this webinar is, by all means, the resources that we are going to provide and the information that we are going to share with you is to help you enjoy this journey of setting goals and then developing the skills and knowledge, offering practice to learners, so that you and your learners achieve success at the end of the destination. So by all means, enjoy the journey, everyone. And when you're talking about a long-term goal and we are talking about milestones, in a context where you are preparing learners for level-based exams, and Rosalie and Johnny spoke about level-based exams very well last Tuesday, you notice that because they are level-based, they have very, very clear focus, and they have very clear competencies that are expected for each of the levels, right? But if you are in a context where you are preparing learners for a multi-level exam, um, the exam that is multi-level, but the goal for you and for your learners may not necessarily be multi-level. So you are preparing learners for a multi-level exam, but what kind of level do you want to achieve after they sit the exam? Do you want them to achieve level A2? Do you want them to achieve level B1? Or do you want them to achieve level B2 or C1 or C2, etc.? As I said, in this context here on the right, the exam may be multi-level, but your goal may be very specific when you sit this exam, right? So speaking of goals, speaking of levels, we also talked about the Common European Framework. All those things now are so integrated into what we do in the classroom, in our course books, and of course in our assessment, that I'm going to invite Rafael to talk to you about can-do statements, right? So Rafael will start with can-do summary.
Thank you, Alberto. So as Alberto was saying, it's very important to understand which kind of exam or ultimate goal that you are aiming for, if it's a multi-level or a level-based exam. And within the category of the exam, we can actually analyze some specific descriptions where we can identify, how well our learners are performing, and if they actually have achieved those goals. So we are going to propose, and we're going to do this activity together at first. Something very simple, okay? I hope you can read from the screen. If not, I'll just read a few things. So here the table shows some examples of typical general ability at a specific level, okay? So here we are talking about a specific CFR level, and these statements are linked, of course, to the CFR. So here, our learner, a student, he can understand letters of English of the English alphabet when heard. Okay, so when we are talking about the ability to hear, on the right hand side we have what skill does this statement relate to. Okay, so if you can use the interaction that was provided, if you could interact with us and maybe guess through the chat, through the conversations, again, with the information that was provided, can understand letters of the English alphabet when heard, and what skill, what specific skill does this statement relate to? And we'll give, yes.
Everyone is typing listening here.
Okay, okay.
What do we
So let's go for the secret, and I think they are Alberto. Thank you so much. You are wonderful teachers. This is a wonderful audience. So you are absolutely right. So this is just to show that, again, the summary is extremely important. We are looking at the ultimate goal at the end, which is, for instance, the exam. But we can actually, by taking a look and examining the summaries, the can-do summaries, we can actually identify specific skills or abilities that the learners are supposed, to have by the end of a specific cycle or program, for instance. Okay, so thank you very much for the contribution. And now we're going to do something very similar, but now it's a little bit more complex. We are taking a scaffolding approach to this. Okay, I will just read a few words. As you can see there, it's the same kind of proposal, same kind of activity. You will be able to see that we have here, for instance, can understand letters of the English alphabet when heard, can understand some simple spoken instructions. Again, I will give you some time to read a few of these can-do summaries. And of course, as we are proposing this activity, on the right-hand side, we have the question. So what skills do these statements relate to? And again, what we try to do is we try to highlight and we try to put some words in bold so as you can actually guide yourself into answering this question. So I'll give you again a few more seconds so you can read the summary and interact with us by guessing or actually getting the answer right about which skills these statements relate to.
A lot of people are typing B for ball here.
Okay, all right. I think people are sharp today.
Yes.
Very good. Should we? Yeah, okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so you are absolutely right. As teachers, again, congratulations. I mean, we do have some keywords that guide us into answering this. So again, heard, understand instructions, understand descriptions, understand conversations, give descriptions, name a few items such as members of the family, animals, and so on, and respond to specific questions by saying, using the word yes or no. So absolutely, we are definitely talking about listening and speaking. Okay, so again, thank you very much for participating. This activity, in my opinion, is extremely important because as Alberto mentioned, we do have one goal at the end of the program, or maybe again, the student, the learner is going to take the exam, but by analyzing the summaries, we are better able as teachers to go down to specific levels of abilities and summaries where we can identify, just like as black and white, my student is able to do this and my student should perform this in a different way, and you can work on the strategies. So also following one activity that is very similar, but here we do have a different question for you. as you can see from the screen. So the table gives some examples of typical general ability at a certain level. Okay, so now we are not only, actually we are talking about a specific level, and we do, of course, have the summaries and the words and bullet points that identify this specific level. But now the question is a little bit different, is what level do these statements relate to? Okay, so I'm going to give you some time to participate, to interact with us. And of course, we highlighted a few items in each bullet point. So again, can understand letters of the English letter, of the English alphabet when heard, understand instructions, understand questions. So maybe let me give you a little bit of help here. Maybe one of the items here is, again, can name some familiar people or things such as family, animals, school, or household objects. Okay, so again, the question is, do you think this is like a very it's at the high end of the Common European Framework, or maybe it's in the middle again, or maybe it's a more a beginner, level? Okay, and I will ask Alberto to help me with the chat if people are answering, or we give them. Okay.
There's a big fight here about letter C and letter D. So I don't know which one is winning, but a lot of people are going for letter C and letter D.
Okay, very good. Again, don't feel pressured by this answer. We are still reading a lot, and there are updates on the Common European Framework and the can-do summaries, for instance. If you are very used to your course book, if you have read the the file that is really comprehensive, it depends really on how much you are familiar with the document, and of course there are some summaries that have been written based on the final document. Okay, so Alberto, I'm going to ask you to move on to the next slide. Yes, believe it or not. Okay, so I know there was a little bit of possibly, I'm in between this answer and that one. So here we are really, and again, I tried to show you a possible hint here, which was again the very basic and familiar topics such as, again, family, animals, school, and household objects. But you will see that the summary is very simple in that way. So here we are definitely talking about an exam that is even, again, pre-A1, okay? So it's aimed at kids, okay, for instance. And this is something, again, the more you read about it and the more familiar you get with your course book, with the Common European Framework and with the summaries, you will be able to identify those items very quickly, okay? All right, so moving on to the next slide, we are going to talk a little bit about assessment tools now, okay? And okay, so one thing that we have here on the screen is separated by skills, as you can see. So on the left side, we have listening and speaking, and on the right side, we have reading and writing. So again, this is a summary where we have the descriptors very well detailed, and we can, again, take a look at each of them. So you'll be able to see there, again, there's a lot of simple in the descriptors. You will see letters of the alphabet, simple spoken questions, simple spoken descriptors, simple spoken descriptions of everyday objects. So again, what is very important here is to make sure that the teachers have these tools in their hands, and this was taken specifically from the handbooks that you can see now on the screen. But you also, nowadays, we have a range of tools that we can use, such as, again, course books, some other descriptors, and some files that have been based on the Common European Framework, or specific programs that identify these descriptors, to make sure that, again, by the end of a specific cycle, by the end of the journey, the learners, students are able to perform those specific tasks. Okay, so as you can see again from the screen, we do have examples of the same handbook for teachers. One of them is designed for the Cambridge exams, for pre-A1, A1, and A2 levels. And on the right-hand side, you have the MYOLE, Michigan Young Learners English, which are designed also for the same levels based on the Common European Framework.
Yes, Rafael, that was very nicely said. One thing I'd like to bring to this presentation today is how can we teachers make better, make best use of those can-do statements in the classroom? I think the first thing is going to your course book and trying to find the descriptors in the units, or maybe at the beginning of the unit, or maybe they are stated in the teacher's book. And then how can I make use of those descriptors in my classes so that I can best observe my learners? So here is one idea that we have kind of put together for you. We can see here the same descriptors that you were reading at the very beginning when Rafael was asking you questions. We have put it in this table. And what you can do is you can look at those descriptors, and then you can put your student's name on the table, and you can decide whether or not specific learners are close to those descriptors in terms of performance. So for example, you can look at student 1, and maybe you can decide whether to give them a grade from 1 to 10, or maybe A, B, C, etc., in terms of how close they are to this kind of performance in your classroom. This will help you to see whether the learners are, for example, at similar levels, or whether you have groups of learners who are maybe at a higher level of performance or at a lower level of performance. And this will help you make decisions about what kind of support you are going to provide those learners, right? So this is a case of a table when you are working with, for example, learners preparing for a level-based exam. I mean, the course book or the handbooks for teachers for that exam will bring a summary of those descriptors, so you don't need to go and create, things from scratch or reinvent the wheel. Just go to the handbook for teachers. You can go to the summary of can-dos and use those can-dos in a table to observe your students and see how well they are performing. If you are in a situation where, for example, learners will be sitting a multi-level exam in the future, you can, for example, use those descriptors. They come from the Common European Framework as well. But here we have a spectrum of levels from the lowest to the highest, and then you can make decisions, for example, not to use all those levels at once. You can make, for example, a table only with 2 or 3 levels that will, this will be more practical for your reality, right? One good thing that Rafael and I have for you is we decided to give you a present, okay? So the present is you can access those tables. They are models, right? You can adapt them in any way you like by going to this QR code or by typing this short URL on your browser. You can go and you can access those 2 tables in Google Sheet format. This means, I mean, the template is ready. You can just make your adjustments for a different level. You can add more descriptors, or you can delete some of the descriptors that are not applicable to your reality. So both tables are there for you as a model for you to access, scan the code, and download. Right? What we kindly ask you to do, please, is This will give you access to a folder with the 2 tables. Don't make changes to the tables right then and there. Just save a copy, make a copy of the tables and save it for you for your reference so that you can adapt it in any way you like and use these with your learners. This is just, as we said, a sample. And then you can develop on top of that. You can make your adjustments and customize it to your situation. And we hope you appreciate this little treat that we decided to put together for you today, right? And now Rafael will talk about skills and knowledge. Since we are talking about goals and descriptors of performance, skills and knowledge with Rafael.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you very much for the gift. It was extremely important, and I think teachers can, again, pick and choose and maybe adapt, but it's a very, very important tool. Okay, so regarding skills and knowledge, again, we spoke about the final destination, which in this case is possibly the exam. And we are trying to break down into smaller pieces. And again, I think we touched 2 very important points. I mean, we have to identify specific skills that our students have and are able to perform, again, specific tasks based on the skills, and what kind of knowledge they have within a specific area, or if we're talking about maybe vocabulary, grammar, their strengths and some points, for instance, to improve. So we, in this case, of course, we are always using the CFR as a reference. And here we are trying to examine what specific descriptors we have for level A2, okay? So as you can see, we have the description there. For instance, can give a short rehearsed presentation about family, briefly give reasons, and so on. But then we're going to try to understand what knowledge is connected to this specific description from the CFR, okay? So we will now start taking a look at specific pieces of knowledge and information that the students will be able to show us by the end of a specific activity, for instance. So here, again, always connected to level A2. Within that presentation explanation about family and so on, it's important to have, for instance, in this case, knowledge of contextual vocabulary, okay? They have to know that they are talking about lexis in terms of family, of course, and also the pronunciation skills are extremely important. Otherwise, they could maybe be using one word and interchangeably, and people wouldn't be able to understand what they are saying. Okay. Another knowledge that we are identify within this category is, for instance, knowledge of adjectives embedded in this context with possessive adjectives and their positions. So again, someone else's cousin, okay, my cousin, my mother, my father, and so on. So again, what we're trying to do here is break down the descriptor into levels and pieces where we are able to identify the specific knowledge that learner has, or something that we have to work on. Of course, extremely important to, in this case, talk about and use properly the verb to be and the verb have in the present tense, because again, it's he is, my brother, my sister, she is my sister, and so on. I have, 2 siblings, and examples like that. Here again, as you can see from the description, it says can give short rehearsed presentation. So again, presentation skills are essential. We wouldn't be able to help this learner if we don't identify and check presentation skills, and we are able to support this learner with specific presentation skills. And the other one, here is the knowledge and on how to express and justify a simple opinion, okay, of course, and sometimes we get emotional, and since we are talking about family, we show preference and we justify, oh, I really love my brother because we are always together and so on. So here again, what we try to do as a whole is get a descriptor and go down to specific levels to identify the knowledge each student has. Now moving on to another activity that is now focused on writing, and apologies, I did not mention the previous one. Of course, the previous one, because we talked about presentation skills, was referring to speaking, presentation skills, speaking, introducing, talking about your family. And now we take a look at one activity that is still on the level A2, but now we are talking about writing, okay? So as you can read there, so here is can write short, a very short basic descriptions of events, past activities, and personal experiences. So one of the components that we can see in this writing descriptor is, of course, here, knowledge of contextual vocabulary and how to spell words. So if the learner doesn't know the domain of what he's talking about, it's impossible to start writing, right? He needs to know that here he's being asked to talk about descriptions of events, past activities, and so on. Another very important component that we have is knowledge of adjectives, including possessive adjectives and their position. Again, we identified very like vital components that if we bring them all together, they form the descriptor that you can see above, okay? Another one that we also saw previously in the speaking part is knowledge of very simple verbs as, again, the verb to be and the verb have, but now in the past. So I had this experience, when I was there, I did this and that. So again, very important to identify this knowledge to make sure that students are able to perform the specific tasks. Another component that we have here is, again, knowledge of how to sequence the events and link them with basic connectors. Extremely important when you are writing to use and, but, because, and to make sure that the students understand that specific sequence. Otherwise, they would be writing a composition that is all over the place. They begin maybe with the end of the story. They, in the middle, they say something else. So when you move from one paragraph to the other, you say, I'm sorry, I'm lost. I don't know if he's talking about the present, yesterday, or he's talking about 20 years ago, or he's talking about maybe a very recent past, like something that even happened this morning, for instance. And another component that will be part of this whole descriptor is basic text organization that I also mentioned very briefly, the importance of using the paragraphs. Otherwise, the examiner, the people or the teacher who is actually reading the composition can get confused because he doesn't know and he doesn't understand the text organization and the paragraphs. Okay.
Thank you, Rafael. I think one thing to remember about those points here is that all those things, they are part of the course book, right?
Yes, thank you, Alberto. Very, very important. Yeah, by the way, just to say a little bit more about that, to be honest, we have been very lucky lately because 20 years ago or many years ago when we studied English, I think the course books did not have all these resources they have nowadays. So again, there are even some course books that in the end of the unit, you can identify that specific skill, knowledge, or even sub-skill, And then if you go on the other page, you can actually check if this has been met by the students. Okay, so they have the objectives on top of the page, and towards the end, you have the specific objectives. Okay, and moving on to, again, this section of learning objectives, but within still the knowledge part of it, I think these questions are very, very powerful. One thing that and I have done, and I think it's important for us to maybe try a different approach, is many times when we are, teaching our students on how to sit an exam, we go straight to the practice tests or the practice materials. Okay, so here we have some questions that are very important for the teacher to know and for the teacher to identify, and make sure that the teacher themselves or the students, they are able to scaffold the process and take piece by piece by actually learn and uncover everything that is being proposed. So here, of course, you can see the questions. What are your students learning? What why are they learning it? Okay, how well are they doing it? And where do they need to go next? Sometimes, again, as teachers, we are so focused in our program. We of course, this is very important. We have like a checklist. We are checking if everything is okay. But I think these questions, they help us see the picture from a broader perspective by giving us some tools to make sure that we check what is going on. And on the same note, for instance, on the right hand side, we have the perspective of the student, of the learner. Okay, can all our students answer the following questions? What are they learning? Why are they learning it? How well are they doing it? Where do you need to go next? Sometimes, again, we have a program, we try our best, but then when we speak to the student and when we check, for instance, maybe the result of a practice test or even the exam itself, we learned that there are a few things that we may have overlooked. We thought that the student had that specific skill, or that he was on the same page as you are, but we end up surprising ourselves by learning that maybe they are not able to answer these questions. What are you learning? Why are you learning it? Okay, yes.
Yeah. Rafael, this is very important, and I think it connects now with another important moment, which is when we are preparing learners for specific levels, we need to be aware of the objectives, and we need also to become aware of what it is, what kind of experience the learners will have. If they are sitting an exam, does the teacher know the exam, and do the learners know the exam well? So with this in mind, I'm going to propose a quick brainstorming here for you guys here in the audience. Here is just an idea, just brainstorming. If you are preparing learners for an exam, be it multi-level or level-based, what is it that you need to know about the exam so that you can better prepare and provide information and confidence to your learners? You need to know many things about the exam. Here is an example. You need to know how long is the exam. You need to know whether the students will be sitting for 1 hour or 2 hours, or if there are different components, and for each component you have, a break in between. What is it that we teachers need to know about the exam? And then I'll ask Rafael to help me with the chat here. I can see some comments, but please help me with some ideas for this brainstorming. Someone is asking here, Rafael, format. Do you see any other comments?
So I see, so what about format? The kind of questions, sections, the structure, timing, rules, topics included, format again, thank you, structure, timing, sections, how is it assessed?
Right. I see words like instructions and interactions, right, within the exam as well.
Yes.
Which
Parts
is very
of
nice.
speaking.
Yeah, thank you for your participation, everyone. As I said, this is just a brainstorming, and I'm sure some of the ideas you have typed here, we have managed to anticipate, but we know that there will be other points that we didn't include in this list that we are going to show, but they will be more than welcome, and they will help us add to our list in another opportunity doing this brainstorming. So maybe you have talked about this. We have things like what skills are tested in an exam, what sorts of questions or tasks that are used to test each skill. So I saw questions like format, items, interactions, how many different parts are there to the exam. Somebody mentioned components in the chat as well. How much time is allowed for each part? I noticed someone mentioned time or length of the components. What are the assessment criteria for each question or task type? I remember a question like, how is this going to be assessed? And how is the exam marked? It's very important that we teachers know about this and that we inform students about this as well. And how are the results presented? Because this has a social impact. I mean, what are you going to get? A report, a certificate, both? And what kind of details do you expect to see in this certificate? And how other people, like maybe a university, an employer, how are they going to read the information presented in the result? As I said, this is just a brainstorming, so it's not something, it's not a comprehensive list, but there are many more ideas in the chat that you have mentioned. The thing that, the reason why we are bringing up this list of questions here is that in the same way that we need to learn all this about an exam, we need to inform learners. So one suggestion that we provide here is creating this kind of treasure hunt activity with your learners. We teachers have a tendency to, for example, get a sample test or a practice test and give it to learners and get them to answer the questions immediately. Our proposal is that instead of doing this in the first place, uh, give the practice test or the sample test to your learners and ask them those questions. Depending on the level, you can even ask those questions in local language, and then you get the learners to explore those materials. And as they explore, they need, make sense of the kind of test that they are going to be sitting in the future. They understand the parts, and then you check all the answers in relation to those questions, and only later will you ask them to actually answer the questions for the exam. I'm sure that when the moment comes for them to answer the questions of the sample test, they will be doing so more confidently because they have explored the the territory they are going to be stepping in, if we can say that metaphorically. So treasure hunt is a good activity for this. And in order to help you enjoy this journey, we have some resources, right, Rafael?
Right, we certainly do. Okay, so now we are moving towards the last part of the presentation. We would like to share with you some resources. And the only thing that I would like to stress here and to call your attention is for teachers to actually always go to the right source. And when I mean right, actually the official source. Okay, the internet is wonderful. It has a lot of important things that we can benefit from. But sometimes we do have some things that maybe are past papers, they're too old, the exam has changed. So again, please make sure that you look for official sample tests, and make sure that you go to that specific institution's website and download the official materials. So as you can see, we do have, for instance, word lists for the exams, starters, movers, and flyers. For the Michigan exams for kids, we have bronze, silver, and gold as well. The same word lists and key and preliminary. with the same tools. And again, we explored some examples of the can-do summaries, and make sure that you find and download the official handbook for teachers, because they do offer a lot of details, and you are able to identify those specific skills and knowledge that the learners have. Okay, and of course also I mean the handbook has several things that you can explore. Okay, that can do summaries and other resources. Okay, another resource that we would like to share with you, if you haven't seen it already, is Write and Improve. Extremely important to assess the writing of your students, and maybe even you can benefit from it yourself. And the brand new Speak and Improve. So please make sure that you visit them. The links are on the page, but we will also, by the end of the presentation, offer you a handout where you can access all these resources. So again, if you haven't seen them, make sure that you visit the websites. Specifically for Michigan Language Assessment, we do have something that we call a test preparation resource library, where you can go to select the test that you are studying or preparing your students for, maybe even select the skills and the resource type, videos, PDF files, or other resources, and you can download and use the resources. They are all free. Okay, one example of these resources is the MET Go listening activities here. We call MET Go Study and Practice. So on the left side, you see the student version, and on the right side, you see the teacher's version, where you have the global skills that you are working on, the sub skills, and even teaching tips where you can identify, and they are completely correlated to the Common European Framework. They can do summaries and all sorts of knowledge that your students need to have. And one of the resources we do have available for teachers as well is the Teacher Seminar Series and the Michigan Test Talks. They are on our YouTube channel. They are obviously free. So make sure that you check each skill. We have videos for reading, listening, and all the skills. So please make sure you benefit from the resources. Alberto.
Yeah. And similarly, Rafael, we have the exam preparation page for Cambridge Assessment English exams. So you will see those colored boxes for each of the exams. You can click on them and you'll be able to download a number of free resources for your classroom and to better prepare the students for the exam. And we also have the Cambridge English TV channel on YouTube, where you can find a number of videos of webinars, presentations, speaking exams. You have the videos there, and you have the playlist of the recent events we have been in, and even the Next Stop Assessment for Learning playlist of videos from the previous webinars in case you missed them, right? So just to recap, we are a bit short of time, by the way. We talked about our goals today. We talked about, from the goals, developing skills and knowledge with learners, offering them a lot of practice activities so that you can build their confidence for the exam. And then they reach the final destination, which is the so desired language qualification, right? For many purposes, maybe a personal fulfillment, or maybe because they are applying for a job, a university qualification, and also just maybe milestones along the way, right? So we also provided you with a number of resources for you to enjoy this journey, make it a journey that is good for you, positive for your learners as well. And we now move on to questions, and we know we have a very short time. So Johnny, please.
Yes, we've been patiently waiting, but that was a lovely presentation. You've received some fantastic comments and people already identifying some of the checklists that they'll be using either directly or modifying for their learning context. So that's always lovely to see. And yes, we've got questions for you. So I'm going to fire. Are you ready? I'm going to fire some of these out to you, and then whoever wants to pick them up, then just shout out. We have one from Aline Benya, who says, "What happens when a student is stronger in a specific skill than the other?" I'm guessing that's from the classroom perspective, but it could be taken from assessment or from learning. So I'll throw that one out there.
Yeah. Well, this is more common than students who are heterogeneous, right? So, I mean, I think this is a more common situation. If you have students who are stronger and students who are less able, this is, I think, a moment for you to plan special support for the less able learners, maybe extra homework that they can do at home, maybe one extra class, dedicated to those learners to develop the specific skills that, in this gap. So I suppose you can focus on specific support for specific group of learners.
Yes, if I may, just one thing to avoid. Sometimes we focus very much on the skills that the students are lacking, maybe ability, and we test them. We give them so much support that they get so much better, and we forget the skills that have been in the first place, fine. So make sure that, again, you use the tools. Alberto shared that. So make sure that you use each of those checkboxes: can do this, can do that, can present, introduce family members, and so on. Don't overlook the skills. Yeah.
Great. Yep. And then Citlali Rojas has a question saying that Citlali works with all kinds of ages and is wondering about very small children and how you can adjust parameters with them.
Well, this is one of the reasons why we made the decision to talk about the descriptors for the pre-A1 level, because we teachers, we teach many different levels, but we see that in general, we tend to teach young learners most of the time. So making sure that you look at those descriptors for the pre-A1 level and get those learners to develop those competencies, making sure that they are getting closer to that performance. And the thing about young learners is the spectrum, right? Because unlike teenagers and adults, where someone at the age of 18 and someone at the age of 20 doesn't make much difference, with young learners, a learner at the age of 4 and a learner at the age of 5, they are very different in terms of competencies, in terms of approach to learning. So it's very important to bear this in mind. What kind of age range are you talking about, and making sure that you associate those targets to specific age ranges?
I have nothing to add.
No, and we've got other questions that have come in, but I believe we're going to be running out of time. Some on motivation, some on lingua skill. I would say please check out the Michigan and Cambridge YouTube channels if you want to feed that particular hunger in the short term, and then maybe in the medium term we'll have something along those lines for you. But thank you for sending those in any case. But please be more forthcoming earlier in the webinar so we can at least have a look at them.
Speaking of channels, sorry, Johnny, just to let people know that we have a handout with all the links, including the channels for Michigan, for Cambridge, all the materials that we mentioned here, including the Google Sheets that we presented. The link is here in this handout, so you can either type this URL or you can scan the code to access the handout and take it with you.
That's great for them to know. Yes, and yeah, we are running over, so it's unfortunately I've got to be the person that closes this wonderful session. We hope we've managed to answer some of the key questions, and I know that a lot of people have taken away some ideas and some of those great checklists and milestone ideas that they'll be taking into their virtual classrooms, hopefully very soon. I'd particularly like to thank Rafael and Alberto for being with us here today and for preparing and sharing this content and their expertise. And I'd like to remind the audience that we have a session coming up, I believe next week. Check out for the reminder email. It's called Packing Your Essentials. So we're continuing with the journey, but we're just going to help you with some resources and with some ideas. So there might be even more of a practical angle to that webinar. So I do encourage you to join us then. Just 3 things to say about that particular event. It's a Facebook Live broadcast, so don't be shy. Follow Cambridge and Michigan on Facebook. It'll probably go down to the Cambridge channel. So in particular, give them a follow and a like. You don't need to register. All you need to do is follow the Facebook page. And there will be no certificate of attendance for that particular webinar. But for those that have attended the first 4, you'll have your certificates. And if you've attended all 4, thank you. In a particular special thank you for that. We hope you've enjoyed the full journey, and you'll be getting a digital badge related to that. So thank you for being with us today. If you wish to contact us, then you should have some contact information coming up on the screen, possibly. If not, please check out our websites. The links are there. Thank you very much. Big thank you to all the colleagues working backstage as well, who make all of this possible. And a special thank you to the teaching heroes out there who inspire us to keep doing what we're doing. And we hope that we offer some inspiration and some help and support to you guys. So we'll see you all in the next session.
Yeah. Thank you, Johnny, and thank you everyone for the nice comments here in the chat.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Alberto, and everyone that helped this session, and all the teachers out there. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.